How long does it take to run? But developers are running these things all the time, continuously, throughout the day, minute by minute.
Gherkin thinks they would be describing, Cuban rather than specific to a story, right?
Yeah.
So
Or more accurately specific to a feature or a capability that the system has. More so that because a user story may be modifying some feature. And 3 months from now, nobody cares about user stories. They care about the features, the specification of what the system is supposed to do. How you got it there, through which steps of user stories, no longer matters. I may hit one particular piece of specification with 8 user stories, changing it, enhancing it, and adding more examples. And I don't really care about the user stories, how we got there anymore. Okay. Yes, Claire?
I think it's worth distinguishing between doing the specification by example workshop and actually automating the result of that specification workshop, because doing the workshop has value whether it ever gets automated or not. I think a lot of the focus is on how do you implement that so it's a safety net for you long term. And that has value. But the biggest value, the most immediate value, is the conversation that you have and the shared understanding when you go to do the thing.
So, what I'd like to do is maybe give 2 war stories, or maybe a success story and a war story. I'm not sure which. But Alex, we talked about earlier, you might have an example to talk about, to mention?
Sure.
Do you want to take 2 minutes or 5 and tell us about the successes and what you learned from it?
Trials, tribulations.
Yeah. So I use fitness. Claire doesn't like fitness. Doing this kind of stuff is great, and do everything the book said. Awesome. Get everybody on the team into it, and that'll be awesome. But what you'll find is that business analysts, no offense, and product owners types generally are not too interested in writing tests. They just it's not their bag, right? So when you start going on and on about writing tables and clicking the test button and watching things automate, they'll be amazed, they'll be impressed, but then they'll forget about it and go back to their Word documents. And it's just the way it is. So I tried for, about a year to get those folks to love this stuff, right? I was getting a huge amount of value of it. Our team was getting a huge amount of value from it. They were liking the fact that we were getting value from it, but they had no interest in it.
And your role in this organization was?
At the time, I guess technically my title was Scrum Master, but I was also testing and programming and doing everything. So, so that's something that you're going to encounter, and I encountered. You don't necessarily have to get to that dream of executable specifications where that is the spec and nothing else, right? It's cool if you can get there, and the pockets of the areas of your software that you can actually achieve that, that's great too. I'm doing a lot better on my current project at this, but primarily because I am the product owner. So that's one way to solve the problem. Become the product owner, then you can do it the way you want. And
Glad to hear that.
so yeah, that's something that you may run into if you like this, you want to learn more about it, and you want to bring it to your team. Understand that you will get pushback, and it's not as easy as it sounds.
Okay. Claire, you want to point it to yourself?
Yeah, I have to draw
Are you going to
pictures.
stand up?
I have to draw pictures.
Okay. So Claire worked with fitness in an application, and they abandoned fitness. And there's some very interesting reasons why, and I asked her to take a moment and see if she can explain the lessons learned there.
Okay, so this is fitness over here, and this is the software code, and some magic happens. I, the tester, put some numbers in here and some strings, A, B, C, and I say...
Speak up a little bit, please.
Sorry. So I put numbers and strings, and I put happy faces or whatever is my expected result that I might actually manually put into the software as a tester. But this is just a table on a wiki page, so it doesn't do anything for me. Unless we're having a conversation about it, you know, we're actually involving each other with this. What I was doing as a tester was defining this myself without a conversation, after planning, hopefully before development, but not necessarily. And so there's this code implementation that's happening in parallel. So it's not an option for test-driven development. That might not be a problem. It depends on your environment. But there's something magical that happens here between fitness and the software code called fixtures. And this interprets stuff in the wiki page to feed the software code. And you can't sell this to a customer. So why invest in it? If you're the business, you're spending precious developer time writing this interpretation code that doesn't get me money. So without the business buy-in that there's value in having this, my team was not able to succeed with fitness because I would make these tables of crap that no one would ever look at again. And it wasn't involving a conversation, it wasn't actually educating anyone or going anywhere. And so it was very frustrating for me to do this for several sprints. I built up some lovely wiki pages that, we're very reminiscent of these spreadsheets that I was using for my test cases that said verify that, But this was a very specific set of data for this particular test case. And it didn't benefit anyone. Now, the major problem that we had was the business wasn't buying into this. And one of the things that I think I learned subsequent to that, here is a wiki page. Who cares if it's in a wiki page? Does anyone go look at it? What's the purpose of the wiki page? If you don't have someone who wants to see it right here, why are you wasting your time doing all this? And so I liked something that Alex said in his API testing. This is for the business, and if the business isn't going to look here, don't invest in it. So there's the whole software testing pyramid, where this is manual, and this is unit, and there's magical stuff that happens here for business logic and integration of units. And those things are below the user interface. So this is where that exploratory testing is happening. This is where the developers are unit testing. And there's opportunity here. So if no one's going to go look at your tables of crap, don't make tables of crap. So make them executable in the product. If it's in the repo, it'll get maintained like product code. So what I have tried doing with an Agile team is pushing things down the testing pyramid as far as possible. If it makes sense to put all these things in a unit test, do it. Don't duplicate the effort. Simplify this, free me up to use my brain to examine the code from a user standpoint. If it's too painful to mock an environment, then push it back up. But don't invest in something that no one gets value from.
So that's a great point about the difference between a unit test and using a unit test framework, right? You can use JUnit or NUnit to write all sorts of cool integration and high-level tests, even tests that exercise UIs, if you want to. Just because you're using the unit test framework doesn't mean you're writing a unit test. Okay, so she's absolutely right. If you have no audience, like I was just describing before, for a fancy wiki table, put it in the code. Leave it in the code. Leave it in your continuous integration server. Leave it in Jenkins or Hudson or whatever, TeamCity, and let it run at that level. And it'll be faster. It'll be easier for the developers to maintain, and it'll be less overhead.
So the particular technology that we were using that we had success with was Spec. We were a .NET shop at the time, so the Ruby language was easy for us to adopt as a testing group. I think we were able to collaborate well with developers, and you can write spec files that are much more human-like. They're still code.
Yeah.
They're a bit more readable. So that's another technology you could look into, even if you're not a Ruby shop. If you are a Ruby shop, then the devs may already be leveraging that unit testing framework here, and you can extend it.
So let me get you, hold on just a second, Al. So I think there's some important key points there in that particular scenario. I worked there with Claire after they had thrown out fitness, so I can understand a little bit about, I wasn't involved in that decision, but I understand a little bit about the culture and what was going on. So some of the big reasons why that didn't work is Claire said that to net it out. You didn't have management and product owner support. You didn't have buy-in. And so if you can't get buy-in, it isn't going to work. But this is incredibly valuable, and you really want their buy-in. You don't want to throw this out. You want to try to get them bought into it. Developers also were not encouraged to write fixtures. There's a lack of support between cross-functional support between development and testing at the time. And so if you don't have a good collaborative environment, then this could also be very difficult.